Hi there. This is Taryn, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm going to be taking you through some of the sacred geometry patterns that I have made available for you to be able to start drawing and creating sacred geometry yourself. So the intention of this video is to introduce you to some of the various sacred geometry patterns. There are seven modules, seven parts of this series. I will show it to you. So this is part one, or module one, where I talk about the sort of basic patterns of sacred geometry, and I've called those the portals for life. And you'll start to see, as I explain through the various sacred geometry symbols and patterns, why I say that. The intention of this video is to support a course that I created a long time ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, called The Joy of Sacred Geometry. And what I did in The Joy of Sacred Geometry is I created a way to teach people how to work with these patterns, more specifically how to draw all of these symbols and patterns. Without a doubt, in my own spiritual journey, in my own meditation practice, in my own seeking to gain insight around the wisdom of the divine, sacred geometry has taught me so much. And there's no better way to learn about yourself and sacred geometry than to sit and draw the patterns. And when I started my journey into sacred geometry and started wanting to use the patterns in mandalas and use the patterns for crystal grids, or just draw them for the sheer joy of sitting in an hour's meditation drawing the pattern, I got really frustrated with the lack of clear instructions available around drawing the patterns. And so what has emerged is I essentially have drawn up the how-to guide for each of these patterns. So for each symbol that you're going to see here today, on the portal, if you choose to purchase that, which you don't need to, you can listen to this video and get some insight into it. But on the portal, when you buy it, you then get, for every single one of the things that I show you today, and for every other module that I show you, a how-to guide that goes step by step explaining it. And you do not need any mathematical experience, you do not need any creative experience, you do not need to do anything. But if you want to experience the joy of sacred geometry and be able to draw it in a fuss-free way, then I have really invested a lot of time and energy in simplifying so that you can draw the patterns in the easiest way possible. And so this video is going to take you through each of those and explain a little bit about the beauty of that symbol. This is not intended to be an in-depth guide to everything sacred geometry. So I'm introducing it to you and see it as an introduction. And I really deeply, deeply, deeply encourage you to explore the symbols that speak to you. And you can do that most in meditation whilst drawing them, and also obviously by researching them. And I will be doing more and more work and sending out more and more information. And one of the things I am planning on doing is hosting sacred geometry drawing parties, so we can work through various symbols, and I'll be drawing it live with you and we can play together. So like I said, this is module one of 7 modules, and saying modules is not technically correct, it's one of the parts. In this one there are 7 different patterns. So this is one I've called Portals for Life. There are 7 patterns. You will see module 2 is the hidden codes, the seed of life, etc. Map of creation, which is all about the platonic solids and the Merkaba. Inviting and magic, which has got a lot to do with the Sri Yantras and the labyrinth and the Taurus, and so on and so forth. And then there's 2 special modules on Islamic geometry and impossible geometry. So in total, if you choose to sign up for all 7 modules, you get 47 different symbols to draw. And like I said, it's a how-to guide. The other thing that you also get, you get this video, you get every pattern is available in a coloring in format. So you can download it to either color it in or to trace it. So if you don't want to draw it and you just want to trace it, you can do that. So you get all those as well as the instructions on step 1, do this, step 2, do that, step 3, do this. And I take great delight in doing that. And I continuously am upgrading the patterns. If you do work through any of the patterns and you find that there is a mistake, please just contact me and let me know. There's a lot of detail in there, and so sometimes things creep in. So like I said, that's a bit about the program as a whole. Today I would like to take you through the portals for life. And when we think of sacred geometry, and especially when we use it in a mandala format, a mandala is a circle, and it really is a sacred container for creation. Everything that is within there provides an opportunity for us to create. And so these are the basic starting points. And like anything, if we have the foundation great, then everything can grow from there. And so this is the foundational patterns for everything that you're wanting to learn to draw going forward. So this module starts off with really noticing the connection between this idea of the circle and the creation possibilities of what we can do within a circle. If we think of a circle as I said, the mandala, the container, this portal for creation, what is available within that? And so we start off with looking at how do we create the circle and dissect the circle. And you'll start off here very simple. How do we dissect it into an equilateral triangle? And it sounds simple, but once you know the technique of this and how to do this without anything other than your compass, you can then start to dissect the circle into 3. Now, starting to dissect the circle into the triangle, and then we can see here the square, we start to notice straight away the relationship between the circle being the container for sacred geometry, the circle being the starting point for nearly all sacred geometry, not necessarily all of it, but nearly all of it, and numerology. So we now start to overlap the numbers that we work with in the universe with this container. So we start to work with the power of 3 or the support of 4. And so those of you that have a passion for numerology and for numbers and for noticing numbers and symbols, so for example, this year in 2020, we're in a 4 year. So this is a great starting point for a mandala if you're trying to create a mandala for the energy of 2020. So we can start to now align this and start to bring that into connection points. And that's the beauty of sacred geometry. I call it, it really is the order in the chaos. And sacred geometry brings a simplicity and an order to everything that seems chaotic to us. So that's a starting point. And if we then move on to the number 5, we can see how to draw the pentagon and the pentagram. And a lot of us have an aversion to this, but the pentagram is a very powerful symbol for connecting with the divine. It's often viewed as a symbol that is in witchcraft and satanic practices even as something that is bad, but the symbol there is turned upside down. So if you imagine this upside down, the pentagon upside down has got a sort of sense of here's the spiritual and the physical and the grounding. If we turn it upside down, then we're in the shadow elements. And again, beautiful energies to work with, to play with your shadow, to notice what you're resisting, to be able to work with this. And all symbols creates a place for us to learn as opposed to attach ourselves to it. In the patterns, I teach you how to draw all of these symbols using the compass and the ruler and so on and so forth. It is basic, it is simple, but I also teach how to use the cheat method, which is using, what's it called now, a protractor, and how you can measure on the protractor and do it very quickly and very simple. So you get both versions of that. Once we've drawn the pentagram, we start to introduce a new facet, and that is called fractals. Fractals is when a pattern can repeat itself multiple times. And so we can see here how the pentagram has started to repeat itself internally. And you're going to see as I start to dissect the circle in additional ways, we start to play with it. Now, when people have done the workshops with me and we sit and we work through each of these and they draw the circle and they dissect it into this, what's amazing for so many of the people in the journey is the patterns or the numbers they have resistance to is something that they're dealing with in their life. So I highly encourage you, sit one day and just do 2, 3, 4, 5, and notice which ones come easy, which ones flow for you, and which ones seem to be sticky and more difficult, because that in itself is intuitive guidance for you around where to work. So then we get the hexagon, which is 6. And so we see the hexagon there, and then we get the Star of David, which is a very, very powerful and well-known sacred geometry symbol. And you can do so much with the Star of David, and starts to form the basis for some of the more complex patterns we work with later on. And again, we see if we fractal it, what starts to happen. And just actually playing with this as a pattern for mandala is beautiful. We then get the heptagon, which is 7. And when we start to put it into 7, we start getting odd numbers, and things get a little bit hair-raising for our mind. And with the heptagon, you can actually create 2 different kinds of stars and 2 different kinds of fractals. So remember, every single one that is shown here, the instructions are there for you to be able to learn how to do it. This is the octagon, so 8. The decagon being 10. I have not done 9 and 11 in the course because it seems to traumatize people, but I will add them in time. And then the dodecagon, which is 12. So really, really sitting and getting more and more complex with the dissecting of the circle. We then start to move into some of the patterns that we can use within the circle, and we start with the spiral. And you can freehand a spiral, and you can just start to notice what that is, but this is the pattern to draw a perfect spiral mandala and how you go about doing that. And you can draw this so that you can work with it in many facets, and obviously this takes us into a place of centering ourselves. So there's the pattern for the spiral, and then we go into one of the magical aspects of sacred geometry called the Fibonacci spiral. And you'll see the Fibonacci spiral here, which is very closely associated with the golden mean. And the Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers that comes from a mathematical historian, and essentially it starts with taking the numbers and you add them onto each other. So we start with the number 1, and we take 1 plus 1 is 2. So we take the answer 2 and we add the original number to that. So 2 plus 1 is 3. And we've got 3 plus 2 is 5. And 5 plus 3 is 8. And 8 plus I'm going to leave it there. You can see it all in the notes. It's all there. And what that does is this has become known as the spiral of natural expansion, is that it's a natural expanding of itself. And so within nature and within, if you go and Google Fibonacci spiral and you look at the connection to nature, and you can see it in the way nature grows. You can look at a pine cone, you can look at a succulent, and it's got this perfect symmetry. And every plant is shown to be the 1 to the 3 to the 5 to the 8, and how that natural expansion, that natural growth comes there. And so learning to draw this is all about allowing the evolution and expansion of your own consciousness, working with opening your mind up to new possibilities. Within the physical form and within music, we also see the Fibonacci spiral in all those dynamics of life. And so the Fibonacci spiral is often seen like this. And so all the one before here is it's just simply been taken away from the blocks. Now in sacred geometry, straight lines are masculine energy and curved lines are feminine energy. And so when you work with this pattern, you start to get the overlap of the masculine structure and the feminine flow. And you can play with that as a pattern. So both of these are available in there. Once you've drawn the Fibonacci spiral, it's a great thing to trace. And then what you can do is you can start to create lots of different patterns with it. The next one is just an example of overlapping the Fibonacci spiral on 30-degree axis points, and how that plays into creating this very beautiful flower pattern that's got multiple aspects of the Fibonacci spiral. And so you can play with the Fibonacci spiral in so many beautiful ways, and I really encourage you to do that. Draw them in multiple sizes, trace them and play with them. Create organic kind of art using the Fibonacci spiral. It's just a sheer joy to do that. We then go into creating what I call the Fibonacci mandala. So that same number sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, is using those numbers to create this series of overlapping circles that again is an expanding consciousness. And this is a beautiful structure for a mandala for growth. If I'm looking at allowing myself to move from the small version of myself to the biggest version of myself, what are my goals? What are my dreams? What are my desires? What are my wishes? What do I want? And allowing myself to expand into my greatest potential, my greatest dreams. We can use the Fibonacci mandala for that. So it's a lovely one, lovely one to draw. Okay, then we go into one of the most important starting points of sacred geometry, which is called the Vesica Piscis or Vesica Piscis, depending on who you talk to. And the Vesica Piscis is essentially 1 + 1 is 3. So we've got the circle, one circle, another circle, we overlap them, and it creates this section in the middle here, which we call the Vesica Piscis. And this is the eye of transformation. This is the void. This is the portal of possibility, and this has a huge connection to the feminine energy. When we look at the goddess energy, you can see the goddess there. It also is the symbol of the fish. If you have a look at the sort of outline of this, and it's probably easier on the next one when you draw it this way, you can see the fish there. If I had to start there, go around and around to there, we see that fish symbol that's so well known in religious circles and in various sacred texts. And so this is a beautiful pattern to work with if I want to invite in new. It is the past, the present, the future. It really is the masculine, the feminine, the child, the mind, the body, the heart. We can look at all aspects of the 3 and allow this to come. So when 1 + 1 becomes 3, we allow it to expand and grow, and we invite in newness and magic. And so that's the Vesica Piscis. And Piscis, if we look at it, we can draw it vertically or horizontally, and this gives a different feel to it. And when you overlap the horizontal and the vertical, we get this beautiful mandala that provides loads of portals for growth and possibilities. And so this is a beautiful mandala to use for abundance, for magic, for inviting in newness, for relationship healing, these sorts of things that we would like to. A great grid for fertility. So then we move into the good old Yin Yang, and the Yin Yang seems like a simple thing to draw, but it is when you know how. And so here's the structure for the Yin Yang, all again about balance and harmony and integration and flow, and how we bring all the aspects of ourselves together. And what I've done in the course is given you a special pattern, which is this Yin Yang variation. So we get these 4 smaller Yin Yangs. You can see here, I have a set of cards that I'm working with at the moment called Dragonfly cards for the laws. And you can see there's a picture of that sort of Yin Yang variation. And so that's a bonus pattern. It's a special pattern, not always available to everybody, where you can draw that pattern too. And then finally in this module we get to this, and you'll see we've been working with the number 0, 1 and 2. All of these patterns are about breaking into 2s and 1s and 3s, and we get this final pattern called the triquetra. And the triquetra is really the sort of mind, body, heart and spirit. Integration is the core focus of this, and you can see how it has this amazing overlapping sort of constructs of things going and weaving into each other, and learning how to draw that. I do encourage you to sit down and have patience when you need to notice the overlaps and be able to draw that. But we end off with this magical triquetra pattern that just brings so much patience. And when you're doing sacred geometry, you learn so much about healing your own perfectionist, you heal your own ego. It really is about the patience to persist with things where I feel like I'm struggling, and once you've got it, it'll be beautiful there. So there you have it. That is all about the portals for life. You can have a look. The others are coming. I'm busy upgrading and doing these videos as we go along. And the next one you'll see is Hidden Codes, which is all about the beautiful seed of life, egg of life, tree of life, flower of life, fruits of life, everything to do with of life we will have in the hidden codes of the divine. So if you're interested in buying it, and you don't need to, but if you are interested, you can email me directly on Taryn Lightwalker. It's 550 Rand for these patterns that I've spoken about today. For all of this is for 550 Rand, plus the coloring in and tracing sheets, or you can do all 6 modules for 3,000 Rand. So that's the 47 patterns. So if you'd like to do all 6 modules, I think I said 7 earlier, I was confusing that number there, all 6 modules. So, and they are payment plans available for that. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you're drawing them, please share them with me. Let me know how it's going. I have a Joy of Sacred Geometry group on Facebook, so join that as well and share your drawings. Share what you're doing. I would love to see them. Sending you lots of love. Namaste.